All right, that's the president of the U.S., and I see my guest here is already smiling. This is Johanna Leblanc, who is the National Security and U.S. Foreign Affairs Legal Analyst. Good evening, Johanna. Of course, it's 11:39 where you are in Washington, D.C. I see you smiling. Why so? Because your president has a prescription.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning. First and foremost, I think that people all over the world should be listening to the medical expert, not the President of the United States. Unfortunately, when it comes to matters pertaining to what kind of medicine to take to fight this virus, as we know, a vaccine has not yet been released. So in the meantime, we just have to engage in social distancing and washing our hands and doing what we can to curb the virus. But another note, I'm not sure if any of you guys have looked at those bottles and the ingredients that is used to create those types of products. And if you read those, if you read the ingredients, you'll know that it is fairly dangerous to take them or to drink them. So I highly advise against using them. And in this case, just please listen to the medical experts, those who have studied this matter and who knows what's best for the public.
All right, Johanna, I don't know whether you have your earphones on. Your voice is not very clear, if you can try to improve that. But even as we do that, so now we hear, of course, the criticism that has been coming on the side against the president. Well, we can allow her a time to look at that, even as we talk about the stories of the United States. Of course, like I said, now, where do I look? Okay, of course, we know that, like I said earlier on, over 1 million cases in the U.S., and I think we have Johanna now. So if you look at that kind of conversation, of course, we have been hearing reports that he's being advised to cease or to reduce his comments on the medical protection or the medical response to this coronavirus. I mean, is it that serious that we're even hearing of a spike in the calls of people asking whether they can actually use the disinfectant to treat themselves?
Well, the reality is that historically, people listen to the president's press conferences as a way to gain information or to get a better understanding of the situation from an international and also from a domestic perspective. But in this case here, we see that's not always the case. I think you have a number of the population that actually watch the press conferences for humor, unfortunately. And I can assure you, if you were to do some kind of survey as to why people actually listen to some of these press conferences, you would get mixed signals. But again, I say listen to the experts for this.
Okay, very, very interesting that you should say that. But just make us understand, because on this side of the world, we would imagine that citizens there have enough access to the correct information. Just how much is the information gap in understanding the coronavirus disease and the pandemic, as it were?
Again, I think that access to information is a privilege. And not only access to information, but also understanding what information is accurate and what information is simply there for satire, right? And there are people who can't discern between the three, right? And that's why it is critically important for leaders, when you are engaging the public, when you are speaking to your constituents and the people who have elected you in office, to provide them with critical information. Now, there's a time to joke, there's a time to laugh, right? But when it comes to a matter as serious as COVID-19, where people are dying at unprecedented numbers, I mean, now we're at 50,000, right? The responsible thing to do is to provide accurate information to the public. And also, as the leader of the free world, out of 190-something countries in the world, the United States is the most powerful country. So when you're talking, you're not only talking to an American audience, you are also talking to the international community. And again, I think that there's a time to laugh, and there's a time to be serious, and this is not one of them.
Okay, all right, and let's speak about the situation that we have. Some of the states are reopening businesses, and of course there has been some people saying that maybe it's not the right time to do so. Where does the United States stand in as far as this is concerned? I know it's the responsibility of governors to make that decision, but is it the best thing based on what the professionals, the medical professionals are saying there?
You know, Sam, the United States is a democracy. So because of that, there is a separation between the federal government and the state governments all over the U.S., right? So the president does not have the complete authority to reopen the entire country. That power rests with governors. So because of testing, because they are doing more and more testing, right? Some of the governors have deemed that it is okay to reopen their states. And but I don't think all of them are making the right decision. Like, for example, a state like Georgia, I don't have the exact number of African Americans who live in that state. But what we do know is that this illness is impacting the Black community at a disproportionate rate. And it is not because of the fact that Black people are following the CDC guidance less than any other groups. It is indeed due to decades of political, social, and economic marginalization by the American government. So when you open restaurants and nail salons and massage parlors in these communities that are frequented by people of color, you put them at a disproportionate rate to, again, be infected by the virus. So I agree that there are certain states and there are certain cities where the virus has not really had a huge impact, that you can go ahead and open those economies slowly. But to have to open all the states, it would not be in the interest of the American people. And another thing is, in the state, for example, in the District of Columbia, studies shows that we have not seen the peak, and we will not see the peak perhaps a month or 2 months from now. So the capital, the nation's capital, right? And the mayor has said again and again, she is not opening. Mayor Bowser is not opening Washington, D.C. And the same thing goes for the state of Virginia, as well as the state of Maryland, which are neighboring states here in the DMV area.
Okay, all right. I asked that question because I think it was on Saturday, the president of Kenya announced that some of the restaurants and eateries will be reopened, but with very strict protocols in as far as the social distancing and ensuring that people who are operating those restaurants have been tested and they are COVID-19 free. So I know the 5 days or so, less than a week that the reopening of states has been happening may be limited in gauging the extent of how effective it has been. But what are the medical professionals there saying that in the coming days, based on the measures that are already being announced by the state governors?
Some of the medical professionals are completely against this. Like, for example, again, I will use Georgia as an example. The governor has said we're going to open the state up, right? But the mayor of Atlanta, which is Keisha Bottoms, have said to her constituents, do not go outdoors, do not open your businesses. This is not the time, especially Atlanta, Georgia, which has a significant African-American population. It would be detrimental for them to go ahead and open Atlanta, the city of Atlanta. But another point I would like to make is that even when those cities or the states reopen, there will be some measures in place. People would not be able to govern themselves like they were doing before COVID-19. The reality is that people are still going to have to engage in a level of social distancing. You will still have to wear your masks. And even in the workplace, I don't anticipate that everybody will be able to go to work all at once. There will be a rotation policy in place where you have a certain number of people in the facility at a time.
Okay, all right, and of course we will continue to watch what is happening there. But I saw a statement that there has been, of course, the confusion caused by the president's withdrawal or halting of the funding of the WHO. It has raised a storm, if I may call it so, at the House of Representatives, but not so at the Senate. Can you tell us, because we heard of this halting, I think nearly 2 weeks ago, what has been the progress in as far as pursuing this matter? Do you know whether that actually the funding to the World Health Organization has been stopped?
What I can tell you right now is that Congress has the power of the purse, right? And the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Chairman Engel, has written letters to the president as well as Secretary of State and the administrator of USAID, providing justification as to why the president indeed want to withhold funding. So because those funds were already appropriated by Congress, in order to discontinue to fund the World Health Organization or to withhold the aid that was already appropriated, Congress wants to see some kind of justification, and in particular the House side, right? But when you go to the Senate side, you see the justification to withhold the aid is a little bit different, right? And in fact, the Senate, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee has asked the Trump administration, and not only the Trump administration, but the World Health Organization, questions about whether or not the organization indeed responded properly to the virus, and whether or not the organization did do its due diligence to ensure that the information that was provided to officials from China were indeed accurate. So we kind of like see a shift in who they want to hold accountable on the Senate side versus on the House side. But the interesting thing is, I think everybody knows this, is that on the House side, it's Democrat ran, and on the Senate side is Republican ran, which is a party of the president.
And so at such a time, I mean, how do you now get to the depth of all these matters, and how do you make sure that, I don't know how to call it, but the truth really prevails so that the decision of the president can now be backed by evidence?
You know, this is my honest opinion, Sam. My honest opinion is that there are emotions in this, and a number of people, I mean, hundreds of people have died here in the United States and across the globe, right? There are a lot of speculation about who to blame, who should we not blame. So I think this is an effort to kind of put pressure on institutions like the World Health Organization, right? And a message to other institutions that receive aid from the American government to say, hey, if you're not on top of it, we're going to withhold aid. But I think ultimately the president is going to release those funds to the World Health Organization, because I don't think it is in the best interest of the American government, nor in the interest of the global community for the largest funder to release aid, to not release aid at this critical moment. So I think ultimately the president will change his mind and we will move on. But there will nonetheless be investigations around who, in terms of when did the World Health Organization first receive the information from China, right? And two, did the World Health Organization have reasons to believe that some of the information was not accurate, right? And three, when the leadership of the WHO traveled to Wuhan, China, did they visit the general hospital? Did they visit specific institutions that could have given them a better indication as to what's happening on the ground?
So you're not certain about whether the financing has been stopped?
I don't think the decision is going to stay, even though the president did indeed indicate that as of right now we're suspending aid while we're conducting an investigation, which is very important that we understand. He said we are withholding aid while we are conducting an investigation. So, but I think ultimately once that investigation has concluded, I think the World Health Organization will move forward with its funding for this fiscal year, and while we're in the middle of this global health crisis. Now, however, I think that there could be some some adjustments, and there could be some provisions in the next aid package that will be provided to the World Health Organization from the United States government.
Okay, just explain to us, because you drew a picture of how the House of Representatives is controlled by the Democrats, the party that is opposing the president, but the House of the Senate is, or rather the Senate is controlled by the Republicans, the party of the president. So when it comes to budget making, who has the final word? Is it the House of Representatives or is it the Senate? And if the president decides to go ahead with his decision, who can counter it, the House or the Senate?
So usually how it happens here in the United States is that in order for, so all of the funding that is allocated or appropriated to the World Health Organization and USAID and State Department and other institutions have to go through the Appropriations Committee on the House side. That is the first step, right? And then it goes over to the Senate side, and then the Senate. So both the House has to vote on the amount and agree on the amount, right? And then the Senate side also has to vote and agree. Now, what we have seen under the leadership of this president is that there has been a decrease in international aid all over the world. And this is nothing that anyone should be shocked about, because the president made it very clear when he was running for the presidency that he was going to be the president of the American people, not the president of the world, and that he is tired of the United States giving aid to the international community in such a large number. So no one should be surprised. But again, in order for any form of appropriations bill to move forward, it has to first go through the House Foreign Affairs, House Appropriations Committee, and then it goes over to the Senate, and then a vote is made, and that's how it's done in the United States.
Okay, all right. As we begin to wind up, let's talk about, because we hear that in the US you're facing challenges with testing kits. I just want to take a look at the numbers in as far as how many tests you have done so far. You are at 5.6 million tests, and but you would have wished to do more. What is the challenge? Because here in Kenya, we're also facing a similar challenge. We have tested about 17,000. What is the challenge in the US that you don't have sufficient kits for this testing?
You know, that is a challenge, right? And I think when you have a population where 1 million people are now infected, you definitely have to do more testing. Because I think you will find out that even more people are infected. But one of the reasons why we have such large number is because I think the United States has done, to a certain extent, a great job at testing the public. But the unfortunate reality is that just about when the virus first came to surface, it was incredibly difficult to go get tested. And even now, depending on where you live, it could still be a bit challenging. And I think that's a challenge that the administration and local governments and state governments all over the United States have acknowledged. And I think they are taking the appropriate steps to ensure that testing is available to all 320 million Americans in America.
All right. And so what do you think? Because obviously the global challenge of the shortage, we hear of some technology or somehow they're trying to make sure they come up with antibody tests. How long will it take? And what do you foresee yourself in dealing with this pandemic?
I think that because this pandemic is so interconnected when it comes to our global economies, because again, this virus has disrupted our lives. It has disrupted our economies. It has created a level of uncertainty that we have not seen in such a long time, especially here in the United States. So one of the things that I can tell you is that whenever it hits the pocket, whenever there's money involved, people seem to find a solution for those types of problems. So I was told recently by by NIH, the National Institute of Health, that a vaccine will come out in the fall. But we are hoping to see something sooner than later, because right now there is no cure. And if we are going to move forward as a society, a cure is definitely needed at this time.
All right, Johanna, of course, thank you so much for joining us from Washington, D.C. to talk about the state of affairs in as far as how the U.S. is dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. And good night now. Now you can sleep.
Asante sana.
Asante sana pia na karibu.
I'm learning. Thank you, Sam. Take care.
All right. Of course, she's already learning about our language here. That's Johanna Leblanc, who is a legal analyst in matters to do with national security as well as the foreign affairs of the U.S. And I want us to take a short break. When we return, we'll be speaking to the NA Kenya party leader, Martha Karua, on the state of the nation. Of course, the coronavirus pandemic has been with us for 47 days here in the country. We'll be looking at the progress that we've made, but also talking about who remains the alternative voice at a time that most of the government agencies have downscaled on the operation. So we'll be having that conversation. But as we do so, let's listen to what President Kenyatta spoke about on reopening the economy.
We will reopen our economy, but this must be in a way that does not endanger many thousands of lives. Some countries, as you all well know, had initially succeeded in suppressing the pandemic, only for them to open up without proper process and consequently suffer a huge spike in infections. We don't want to go that way.